So that's kind of where we see ourselves fitting, is somewhere in between this traditional transactionality where there's projected 900 billion card transactions being processed in the state of Georgia by 2028, and the Lightning Network, where there's lots of liquidity scaling every day. I think you just mentioned the new latest stats at the beginning of the episode. And so, how can we help traditional payment companies, fintech companies, take advantage of this and integrate it in a way that will benefit their businesses, benefit the Lightning Network, benefit the Bitcoin community, benefit consumers? Everybody wins. And so that's kind of where we're trying to sit, is right there in that middle. And whether that's just having a place for Bitcoiners to work and build and come up with cool things, or to network with fintech companies and to network with Bitcoiners, or just like putting on events, right? Workshops, getting large companies like Fiserv or FIS Global or Incom or any of these large financial technical companies, fintech companies, to come in and get a workshop for the day or for a weekend to understand what is the Lightning Network, what is Bitcoin, how does it work, how do you use it. So that's kind of, I think, the focus for us, because that's such a massive opportunity.
Hey everyone, welcome to another session of Changing the Tide. I'm your host, John Crabtree. Today, very, very excited, honored to have on Bryan Nonni. We're going to be talking about his role today as co-founder of Terminus Electric Money Lab down in Atlanta. He also does a lot with TabConf. So he's one of the, not one of the organizers, but he's one of the volunteers the many volunteers who helps put it on. So that really at Terminus, they are trying to, they're in transactionality where 70% of processed payments in the United States go through one of the companies located, one of the many companies located there in Atlanta. And they're really trying to become the bridge between transactionality and the Lightning Network. And they're trying to do it from a grassroots, ground up, all the way to the corporate executive level for both adoption and understanding. And really just scale on Lightning so traditional companies can leverage Lightning and hopefully do so to provide better and better services that also help them profit. So excited to dive in with him, and let's get to it. Bryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, John. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm stoked. You have been doing some cool work on Lightning for a while now, and are at Terminus Electronic Money Laboratory in Atlanta.
Yeah, Terminus Electric Money Lab down here in just south of downtown, over near the Beltline, in a pretty hip and up and coming part of town called Old Fourth Ward.
Sweet. Yeah, I just actually drove through and realized that there was another building called Terminus, so I thought that was where you guys are. And it turns out Terminus has some cool history, so we'll talk about that as well. Let's dive into the Clark Moody Bitcoin dashboard and Amboss. We're just going to take a quick look at some of the fun stuff that's going on in the Lightning world. On Clark Moody here, we are at block height 759,387 for posterity. There are 84 million plus UTXOs now, which is crazy to think, 84 million. In the public stats for Bitcoin, we've got 14,458 reachable Bitcoin nodes. We learned from the episode with Roy at Breeze that there are probably a similar amount across at least Breeze, Phoenix, and Moon. So on the private network, which is pretty amazing. And then as far as Amboss is concerned, let's see here. Well, I might just have to go back to Clark's Lightning Network. We got 4,990.38 Bitcoin in the public Lightning Network. So we're probably a little bit over that with all the private, but I mean, 5,000 Bitcoin represents almost $100 million. And the guys and people at Terminus are trying to make that even more. I know. So so let's talk about it, Bryan.
Yeah, sounds good.
Let's talk about your background first, and just
Sure.
how you came across Bitcoin and Lightning.
Yeah, sure. Let's go back to 2014. I was working in communications and digital marketing,
Mm,
and I was not very technical at the time, but very curious, just generally about technology and new innovations in the space in the world, really. Um, and so I was always seeking new, novel information, interesting ideas. And a buddy of mine got married, so we went up to Sandy Springs and we got haircuts and beard trims. And in the window of this barber shop was a sticker that said, "We accept Bitcoin." And I remember thinking to myself, what the hell is Bitcoin? Yeah, it's like, what is that? And so I turned to my friend at the time and said, "Hey, what the heck is Bitcoin? How do you pay with Bitcoin?" And he gave me a very high level explanation about how its kind of value is based on the market, and it's kind of only valuable where it can be used. And so he kind of gave me some broken economics, really. And looking back on it, and not being super technical and trying to go look into the realm, found a lot of technical documentation information. I kind of just brushed it off. I was like, I don't really get this. I don't have time
mm.
to dig into this right now. So I just kind of walked away from it, much to my chagrin, um,
Yep.
as you can imagine. So it's a pretty common story. But fast forward to 2016, I finally was pretty sick of doing the things I was doing in my current role and wanted to be more technical. So I started teaching myself how to code. I went to a couple of boot camps over at General Assembly over in Pont City Market here in Atlanta, and quickly just picked it up. Was like, wow, this is something I want to do for the rest of my life. This is amazing. I found my passion. And then right shortly thereafter, after getting sort of a baseline of like JavaScript, and started building websites for people and started building out my career in that direction. At the time, didn't realize it would be a career, but wanted it to be. Um, my brother texted me and said, "Hey, have you heard of this stuff called Ethereum?" And I was like, I've never, I don't know what you're talking about. Right. So that's what kind of, that then pushed me into like, oh, what is this cryptocurrency thing? What is Ethereum? What is Bitcoin? And so I started digging in at the time, because I was technical. I started digging into online technical courses like EDX or Coursera, and took like a how to build your own cryptocurrency, which is, it was basically a primer on what is a cryptocurrency, what problems does it solve, double spending, avoiding counterfeit, etc. And then I started getting into the financial side of Bitcoin. So that's kind of the story of how I got to the realm of buying and holding and being interested in the financial side. And then it wasn't until I went back to school for a computer science degree, got out and got to NCR in the innovation lab, where I got really, really technical at a low level with Bitcoin Core, and then LND came out, and all the things that we know and use today as being, innovations in the space, was really when I got hands on and in depth with them. And so, yeah, so then, fast forward to this past year, and been attending lots of bit devs here in Atlanta, and Alex and I were working together, and Steven was leading bit devs, and then we all started kind of working together on different projects and bit devs, and then we all kind of helped with TabConf, and well, Steven did a lot of work with that, and we helped him out with that. And so then we all realized, like, we need a physical space. We need something like they have in Austin with the Commons, or with Pleb Lab, or like they have in Chicago with Strike, or like they have in, name a place like New York City and the bit devs up there. So, and Chain Code. So we thought we need to start that. We need to move forward with that. And so that's kind of the soup to nuts how I got from Bitcoin into what is now starting Terminus. So there you go. That's it.
Yeah, nice, nice. It's like your high level. It's always funny with these because it's like, oh, what's your Bitcoin story? And it's like, well, dude, it's been since 2014. That's 8 years.
Yeah. How much time you
Yeah.
got?
At the same time, it's cool to hear some of those things where you got into it before you were technical, before you knew how to code, and it, in a way, it seems like it kind of coincided with you learning how to program, and because Bitcoin is programmable money. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely aided my current like passion, right? And it still is my passion to be a software engineer, to be technical, to write code, something I love to do. But it being programmable money, yeah, was like, wow, this is interesting. And I remember it's funny to look back on life, because there's been so many times in my short career in life where I've made goals and almost forgot about the goal. I wrote it down somewhere and then lost the piece of paper or didn't look back at that journal entry. And then I look back like 5 years later and think to myself, oh my God, I made that goal. I forgot about that goal, but I achieved that goal. And I remember being in my apartment in 2017, sitting next to my roommate, um, who is still my best friend to this day, and turning to him and being so excited about the concept of a data structure called a blockchain, and so excited about the realm of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, and so excited about the value that it could bring to the world that I wanted, and then excited about this new realm of software that I was diving into. I told him, I said, one day, mark my words, I will be a software engineer and I will be focused in this realm, in the blockchain technology realm, some way, some shapes. Don't know how yet, but that I know it's going to happen. And I remember writing it down too, and I forgot about that. And then, lo and behold, it's 2022, and I work with this technology. Whether it's application layer, which is then using that lower layer, or just on my spare time working in the open source. So, yeah, it's interesting how life kind of like throws these things into your path, and you either embrace it or you just kind of watch it go by, and then you create this goal around it and you forget about it and you kind of just fall into it. It's kind of a beautiful thing, really.
Yeah, yeah, and it's this concept of that I hear from a lot of people in the software realm that like programming really brings a new level of freedom and almost sovereignty in a way. Have you seen that in your journey as a software engineer, specifically working in Bitcoin? Has there been a new, s- yeah, almost sovereignty that you can kind of bring to bear in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, you know, just specific examples would be when I first started working in the real world. I graduated college. I had a job that I used to drive an hour and a half each way without traffic, right? So then 2 hours each way, and I had to be in the office. Yeah, right. And so it was like that's actually where I found my love for podcasts, because I had two
Nice.
hours, 4 hours a day to burn. So I started listening to long form stuff, but yeah, so that's like a huge limitation on my time, on my availability to enjoy my life. I have to spend 2 hours at 5 p.m. on 285. And if anybody is, if you're from Atlanta and you hear that, you're like, oh my God, that's miserable.
Just
To be,
drove it myself and experienced it. So
yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, so it's not the best, but then looking at my life today, I work from home constantly. There's this concept of digital nomad, but I wouldn't say I'm a digital nomad by any means, but I definitely have that ability to be. And all of my team, at Liberty X and Liberty Pay and NCR, like everybody I work with there is all remote. And then the physical location that we have here is really the main reason I move from my house and out about, because I like being around Bitcoiners, people who share the same ethos, have the same drives, want the same things, have goals to build cool stuff. So yeah, so that's just a very small example that can dramatically impact your quality of life by working in and around this decentralized technology that lets you basically be anywhere and have access to the world's soundest money and best monetary system.
that's awesome. Yeah, yeah. To that end, Brian has generously offered to help teach me how to run my node from the command line, which is actually a goal I've had for a while. So I'm stoked to at some point get that going too. Um, so Brian, then Terminus, man, there's a huge history behind that name, and I think it's like it overlaps industries too. So maybe could you bring us non-Atlantans? Is that how you say it? Atlantan?
You could say Atlantan. There's also Outcast, the rap group, was started here, and they've got the song "AT Aliens." So
I like
that's
that.
also, yeah, that one's pretty good. So you can go with that as well.
AT aliens.
Yeah. Yeah, excuse
Yeah,
me. Yeah, so either way, but yeah, I mean, Atlanta has an interesting and pretty rich history. I mean, Georgia is an original 13 colony, right? So pretty old state. And then during as far back as the Civil War, there is history like Sherman's march to the sea and his burning of anything in his path, right? And Atlanta was in that path. So it's actually nicknamed the Phoenix. And if you go look at our state seal, or the city seal rather, you'll see a phoenix on the seal, and that's on all of the buildings and branding for the city of Atlanta, and the trucks for the employees that work for the city, because a phoenix dies and then rises from its own ashes. So, and there's also I believe, a statue in Woodruff Park of a phoenix from, and this piece exact date is evading me, but it was donated to the city back around, I don't know, sometime in like I think the 80s or something like that. I'd have to look up the exact piece of history, but there's a long-standing history of Atlanta being this like phoenix, so this rising from the ashes. And so anyway, it's a little bit of a sidebar to set up this idea that there was also railroads that needed to be connected through the country, and so you had to come from west coast to east coast, and of course northeast down to the southeast. And so around that time, as they're racing, pardon me, they're racing to build these railroads across the country. Atlanta was made the terminus point, and so that's where the name Terminus sort of came from, was it being the hub for both these major railroads. And initially, I believe there is a stone marker for the 0 mile post, for the Western and the Atlantic railroads meeting, and that was in a place called Thrasherville, I believe. Which
that's a cool name.
Yeah, well, John Thrasher in the 1800s built homes and a store in this area, and then settled it and nicknamed it obviously after himself. That's why I believe our hockey team for a while was the Atlanta Thrashers, as you can imagine.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so a marker that then identifies Thrasherville, which is right there off Marietta Street, right in front of the state bar, so the Georgia State Bar building. That's where it was put, and that was the terminus that would mark the endpoint. The W and A, at the Monroe Railroad would meet at the W and A at the terminus, excuse me, W and A Western and Atlantic. Um, so yeah, so this is like the oldest. There's a little picture on, you can probably find it on Wikipedia, but there's a picture of this like post, and it is the oldest man-made structure, I believe, in downtown, having been from the 1800s. So then
Wow.
they moved it, and that was probably like 1840 or 39, somewhere in there. And then they moved it in a couple years later. They moved Terminus's location 4 blocks southeast, to what is now 5 Points. So 5 Points Atlanta, and there's actually a new like capstone, or a new 0 mile post. Not a lot of people know this, but it's there. I've walked by it because it's right next to Georgia State, and I remember walking by it one day and opening up my phone and looking up and being like, oh my God, this is like the terminus point. Like, there was like nothing there, right? It was like underneath an underpass.
Right.
And you're like, wait a minute, this is like a historical thing. Anyway, that's a whole other rabbit hole. But yeah, that's kind of the rundown of the history of how Atlanta's nickname came to be Terminus.
I found that fascinating because I guess I never put two and two together. I'm a huge history and geography geek, but I've only ever really lived like in the northern and western parts of the country. uh, and I'm actually a huge Atlanta Braves fan, but I've always had to watch from a distance. But in any case, what's interesting is it's really in this valley, isn't it, Atlanta? That like you've got the Appalachians that kind of end right there,
Hmm.
um, at the like a little bit north, and so in order like it was such a great part for the West to build across because you didn't have to go through mountains.
Yep.
Um, so at least from the western side of the Western Railroad. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I'm sure
yeah,
the coming in from the Atlantic side was a bit of a challenge, but maybe they stuck to the coast if I were to bet. But
yeah. But then that's the railroads were the rails of the economy for the industrial revolution in the industrial age. Now Atlanta's, you know, I didn't know this. I should have because I'm in the credit and debit payments industry. That's part of
yeah,
what I do.
right.
But it's really kind of the terminus for payment rails, isn't it, Atlanta?
That's right. Yeah. So that's kind of been our I don't want to call it a shtick because that makes it sound, kind of like weird, but it's basically like that's kind of been our goal as a business, as a center, being a bridge, if you will, from transactionality, which is this giant traditional financial realm of payments, which is like 70% of US processed payments being processed, or I think it's 70% of the US, and just slightly for global, but a lot, right? Industry, 70% of these pass through Georgia. That's like 369 billion transactions annually, and it's projected to grow to like in the 8 to 900 billions by 2028. So that's 6 years, right? So as you can imagine, if the Lightning Network is to scale to be sort of new sort of transactionality, if you will, or like it's supposed to scale into a payment network that will unlock the value of Bitcoin and make it move quickly, it will eventually come to disrupt traditional transactionality. And as much as that's a good thing, and for all these different reasons to make companies compete and provide the most exquisite user experience possible, it's also can be, with all good there is bad, and so it could end up being a challenge for those companies that have such massive infrastructure to scale and to remain competitive and to provide good services. So that's kind of where we see ourselves fitting, is somewhere in between this traditional transactionality, where there's projected 900 billion card transactions being processed in the state of Georgia by 2028, and the Lightning Network, where there's lots of liquidity scaling every day. I think you just mentioned the new latest stats at the beginning of the episode. And so, how can we help traditional payment companies, fintech companies, take advantage of this and integrate it in a way that will benefit their businesses, benefit the Lightning Network, benefit the Bitcoin community, benefit consumers? Everybody wins. And so that's kind of where we're trying to sit, is right there in that middle. And whether that's just having a place for Bitcoiners to work and build and come up with cool things, or to network with fintech companies and to network with Bitcoiners, or just like putting on events, right? Workshops, getting large companies like Fiserv or FIS Global or Incom or any of these large technical companies, fintech companies, to come in and get a workshop for the day or for a weekend to understand what is the Lightning Network, what is Bitcoin, how does it work, how do you use it. Yeah, so that's kind of, I think, the focus for us, because of that's such a massive opportunity. So yeah, that's the ethos. At least we'll see how we continue to do. Right.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it'll be interesting because there's that tension, right, between Bitcoiners who will say, like, a lot of these legacy financial businesses will get left behind if they don't adopt soon, and it will actually be like newer, maybe like your Strike or you know
Hmm.
other businesses that are Lightning focused that will start to take over. Um, but while there's billions and billions and billions going through like the legacy financial system, and there's maybe 100 to 200 million as it stands now at work in the Lightning Network, public and private combined. There's some work to do to really scale uh, that dollar amount processed. And I'm not even thinking in fiat terms, but even more Bitcoin being added into Lightning because these companies are converting some of that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, And it pains me to say, as a Bitcoiner, as somebody who believes heavily in the Lightning Network, as somebody who really I got deeply technical with the Lightning Network really before I did with the Bitcoin network and like on-chain Bitcoin transactions. I probably know Lightning infrastructure, Lightning technology more intimately than on-chain, and I believe in it. But there's a lot of problems, and the scalability is not 100% there, and there's a lot of liquidity issues. There's a lot of privacy issues still. I think TabConf was interesting because Matt Corallo did a talk there called "Lightning is." Can I cuss on here, or should I avoid?
That's fine.
Okay, all right. Just want to make sure. He did a talk called I believe it was called "Lightning is broken as fuck, but we can fix it." Right.
Huh.
And so it was awesome. I'm looking forward to when those talks go up on YouTube because I really want to watch it again. Because he basically would just go slide by slide and outline all these things that are wrong or broken or not working as we would expect or want or hope. And then kind of gives like unique ways of, or not unique, but just interesting ways of how to fix them. Of course, trying to race to capture the Bitcoin, I was half listening and half, paying attention. But yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot of work to be done, I think, is the point. And I think there's a lot of people, a lot of Bitcoiners out there that understand where I'm coming from with that. As much as we all want to know, like we all believe this can be the next transaction alley and scale to that level, there's still a lot of work that we need to then set up the infrastructure to allow that to happen.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe that's the next question then I have, going off that is, so I work at a company that does like donations processing
Hmm.
and through the legacy system. So you've got your credit debit cards and you've got your ACH. Um, because you are doing work to help a company that's in that space, research and potentially adopt Lightning. What are some what is some advice you might give to someone like me or others who are in the legacy who see their company and right now, funny enough, we are still so early in Lightning. Like
Yeah.
there's really no other company in my industry that has integrated Bitcoin Lightning Network. So like,
Hmm.
how can we advocate from within? Maybe what are some big selling points, I guess?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's going to depend heavily on the type of organization and what are the goals of that organization, and at the highest levels, so the executive level, what do they care about, what do they focus on, and then a big piece of it's going to be the culture. So is there a
Mm,
culture of innovation, and is there a culture of trying new things, and looking for edge, right? Is there a competitive advantage culture?
uh-huh.
And so, you know what I mean? So a lot of, and those can be grown and built, and you can foster that. And I've seen that happen at, in my roles at NCR and in other places. But yeah, I mean, I think the best way that I've seen it be propagated is to get it out in front of people internally that make decisions about the future of the company, about whether the company is going to innovate, how they're going to innovate. And I think the something that anybody can get behind is, hey, I have this problem. This problem is a large problem for myself and or my organization,
Hmm.
right? And I'm publicly talking about this problem to try and figure out how to solve it, at least publicly insofar as internally, right? So if you're
Hmm.
talking to your employees at all hands or your team or whatever it is, and you start hearing these problems like we need to solve X, Y, Z, and then figuring out how this problem fits in the framework, or that problem can be fit to then be fixed by Bitcoin, Lightning, or some sort of a service or app that is leveraging Bitcoin and Lightning, and then putting that together and getting it in front of somebody to make them see or understand, like, hey, you have this problem, we can solve this problem, here's the costs, here's the returns. And it's hard to ignore those numbers or those facts, right? If it does work, it doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. So that's usually my go-to is fighting the sentiment with facts or information, because at the end of the day, most organizations are trying to either break even or just stay afloat, right? And some, like, you just want to be able to like take home enough to be able to keep your business running and keep providing services. Or if you're a large company and you're trying to make a profit, you're profit motives, right? So you want to make as
Yep.
maximize as much profit as you can. So yeah, so that's I think the biggest, at least from my perspective, way to be able to get it into the ethos or into the heads of the people that make those decisions. And anytime you can have a good relationship with somebody in that role and kind of show them, right? Because a picture
Yep.
is worth 1,000 words. So if you
For
can
sure.
show somebody how simple something is, or how easy it is to integrate with, or how cool it is, and sexy, if you will, as far as technology goes, that's always a good way to get people on your side. And yeah, so those are, I think, the top things that come to my mind for ways to kind of get an organization to pivot and shift and focus on that realm.
Yeah. And that's awesome because you guys have there at Terminus, you've got a really big asset there in Steven, who's a big part of the Bitcoin design community, right? And I mean, that is like, if you're trying to integrate Bitcoin into your company, they've gone a long way towards kind of developing almost a standard of how to design for and integrate Bitcoin. So,
Ab- Absolutely, yeah. The, Stephen and the design community have done great work in in that realm for sure, and that's going to be a huge piece of mass adoption and helping people understand value and communicating with them. Because as much as there are different types of learners, people who are auditory or visual or pragmatic, where they have to like do it, I would say a lot more, there's a lot more people in this country that are visual learners or visual right comprehension. And so having something visually, we can't, I guess my point is, you gotta speak to, or you gotta give credit to how important that piece of software is, right? How the user is going to interact with it, how usable it is, how does it feel, how does it look, does it make sense? Yeah, I agree with you 100% there.
that's cool. Okay, so Terminus and Terminus Electric Money Lab. Where are you guys in terms of like your growth phase? Did it just start? I think I remember
Yeah,
this
so
year.
yeah, this year probably June.
Nice.
Yeah, June, July, somewhere in the summer, mid to late summer. Quite honestly, it's been such a whirlwind of a year. It's hard to remember. It's been crazy. But yeah, as far as like phase, I would say we're very early right now. We started out with 112 square feet of an office inside of a larger partner, right? So we partnered with Alkaloid Networks, which is a locally owned Atlanta co-working space.
Cool.
And we would basically rent space out of there. We'd fill it with desks and start putting it out there for members to join. And slowly but surely, we got different members at different levels, and we're pretty, at the end of the day, we're a community organization. That's our goal, is to be grassroots, community focused. And so we've worked with our community members a lot to try and find what balance for budget and value works for them, as well as, we're still trying to operate as a business and stay afloat. So we can't, we could probably have months where we're in the red a bit for a little while, but we can't do that, week, month over month. We got to make sure we pay the bills, and that way everybody can continue to. So it's that balance, right? Everybody can continue to have value. And so that's kind of where we're at, is scaling. And then we've since, right for TabConf, we scaled to, almost about double the square footage. And we've added more desks. We've gotten more members. TabConf was great for us as well. We were able to get ourselves out there a little bit. We threw a party here on last Thursday, which was a
Nice.
lot of fun. Yeah, we had a good turnout. We were scared. I was like, man, I don't know how many people are going to show up, and then we had like 80 or 90 RSVPs. So it went from like, I don't know if anyone's going to come, to like, oh my god, I hope everybody doesn't come. Because it's like,
That's
how
a
do we
pretty good
fit?
place to be when you're throwing an event.
For sure. Like, how do you fit that many people into this space? Like, oh my god, it's going to be chaos. But luckily, I would say probably 60 people throughout the night ended up making their way in. It was a great crowd, lots of people, very good time. we screened the movie They Live, which I had never seen before, which was weird and funny at the same time. So, but yeah, so that's kind of the phase, I guess, to your original question. That's kind of the phase we're in. Is like focusing on the community, trying to scale our space, trying to keep our partnership with Alkaloid strong and give people value while also growing the community, the Bitcoin community inside of Atlanta. And you could call it, if you wanted to put it in like the official terms, you could call it like pre-seed friends and family stage of growth as far as startups go.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's fun to be able to talk to you on this end because I no doubt the vision that you guys have to be that grassroots. I mean, partnering with a local community, or sorry, a locally owned um,
Hmm.
co-working space, and saying, "Hey, this has worked in other cities. We just happen to be in Transaction Alley, so we've got
Right.
a ton of companies where this is going to benefit." And um, that's a good question. Like, have you been um, shocked? Have there been any surprising, like, oh my gosh, you're Bitcoin and you work where? Like, have you guys met Bitcoiners with interesting stories coming from some of these, or is it still early in Atlanta as far as the Bitcoin community?
Yeah, it's a great question. We had some guys come in outside from outside of Georgia for TabConf, and we got to meet some of them. Like, um, I think I think his name's Christian Liu. I can't
Hmm.
remember exactly how to pronounce his last name, but he works on Simplicity, I believe, over at Blockstream
Oh,
for the Liquid Network, and interesting guy. And then we had another Bitcoiner whom works on Fediment, and Justin Moon was here for a little bit. So that was cool to be able to work with those guys in Terminus. We had them all come in. They were looking. It was cool because it was the model, right? Like that's our model. Is like, oh, you're coming in from out of town. Oh, you want to come hang out with Bitcoiners? Like, we're right here. Come hang out with
done.
us. Yeah, exactly. And so it worked. It was like, yeah, people came in town. They were like, hey, I need a place to work for the day. Can we come work with you? And we're like, yeah, come work with us. That's why we're here. And so it worked, and it was nice to see that, and it was fun to have those guys in town. And we hope to continue to see stuff like that happen. Where, for example, I got to meet Rod over BitKite over at Nashville. He was here
Nice.
for the party. Yeah, super nice guy, great guy, fun to talk to, and I just assume like I'm just gonna hit him up next time I've been wanting to go to Nashville. I'm just gonna shoot him a message, be like, hey, I want to come work, like and he'll
Yes.
same thing, right? Same model, same idea. And so yeah, I mean that's kind of we've had that sort of growth, and those people have come through. Other than that, there's been people mostly from our Atlanta Bit Devs group that have been members. So people that work at companies like there's a guy who works at Coinmetrics, which I think they do like analytics, right, for like various current cryptocurrencies. So that's something to note, right? Is like our our goals with it long term are different than what we're doing right now in the short to medium term. And right now we're heavily focused on getting members in here so we can scale our desks and scale our space and provide value to people who need places to work, who want to be around other people similar to them. um, and that's really not like a Bitcoin focused only thing. It'd be kind of weird if it was like, oh, you want to rent a desk from us, we have a co-working space and a partnership with a co-working space, like, oh, fill out this form, do you work in Bitcoin? Like, no, sorry.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's like it's kind of like if you want to come rent a desk for a day or for a week, or you want to be a resident, that's fine, just come talk to us, we'll figure it out. But then as far as like the what other stuff we're doing right now is heavily focused on events. And so,
Yeah.
I think Steven is helping coordinate something with Bolt.fun and their upcoming Legends of Lightning hackathon.
Sweet.
Really, I think we were joking about it the other night. It's really more like a marathon than it is a hackathon, because I think it's like a month long, and there's like a whole designathon that happens first and all that. And so that's kind of the short term to mid term focus, and long term different goals and dreams. But yeah, that's beyond the scope of your question. But That's kind of where we're at. And so we've got other people that are from things like, BlockFi, or Alex works at Blockstream, and I'm working at LibertyX and NCR, and so we got different, nothing too crazy, but we're hoping to get some cool stories and some more Bitcoiners in here soon, rather than later.
Oh yeah, it's for sure early days. I think more the genesis of my question was like, did you hit the like hit I guess tap into the gold at the end of the rainbow by finding like Bitcoiners at some of these transaction alley companies or not? But I mean, we're three,
Ah,
4 months in, so
yeah,
uh,
we're reaching out. It's not like it's a little bit more of a challenge than I expected, but we've got friends and colleagues in the traditional financial space that we're trying to lean on to help us with that. And so we're hoping that
that's cool.
in the near term, in the short term, in the near, like midterm, until we can get some context there, we're going to be trying to network with people in that space and finding opportunities to do that. So we're hoping that will continue to grow.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, it's an if you build it, they will come kind of thing. Like pre-seed, we're
Yeah,
sitting here if you want to equate it to that at pre-seed, but I'm really stoked on what you guys are doing
sweet.
there.
Thanks.
Question for you working in Lightning. What's like something you're stoked about right now? I mean, there's Lightning in general, which I know you're stoked on, but
Hmm.
anything specifically that you see going on right now in Lightning that you're excited about?
Yeah, I think last week, 2 weeks, last week, so LDK team signaled support for, like, this is very specific, but it's something that it feeds into a very broad thing that's coming to the network in the long term, which is that of Bolt 12 invoices and offers, and changing the way we invoice and providing a bit more secure or privacy to receivers, and senders with blinded paths and all this stuff. And so LDK recently signaled support for onion messaging. And then onion messaging also will set us up to enable blinded routes or blinded paths and route hints. And then that sets us up, all that onion messaging and blinded routes and all of those ancillary technologies that come from that will set us up for offers. So the ability to create an offer and somebody could pull an invoice from across the network to then pay it, or you could do a refund with that, where you basically push an invoice. So you basically say, "Hey, I want to get paid," and they will send you an invoice through the Lightning Network, so you can get refunded for whatever it is you didn't get your value on. And so, yeah, so that's a pretty big signal, I think, in the noise of a lot of things going on. And it's good that they're still focused on building that support in there. And I'm really looking forward to it, because that's two out of the three major Lightning implementations basically signaling towards that end, which would be Core, who sort of invented it,
Yep.
and then and now LDK, and then I honestly can't don't know if LND has signaled, or is if there's, I'm sure they're looking at setting up support for that, or figuring out. Yeah, I'm sure once it becomes standard or sort of continues to proliferate, they'll continue to build around that. And so that's a very exciting thing from my perspective. Um,
Yeah, because Alex at Blockstream, right, is the other Core Lightning is from Blockstream
right.
or out
Yes.
of Blockstream.
Core Lightning is from, yes, from the, I think they call it the Elements project, but yeah, it's Blockstream, and the and a bunch of really smart engineers over there building that out.
That's cool. Do we know anything about whether Eclair is signaling for any of that?
I don't know. I know that the guy who runs Async, which is the biggest node on the network, was at TabConf. Uh, I think his name is I'm probably butchering it horribly, but I
That's
know.
okay.
So apologies if you hear this. But yeah, he did a whole talk on how to run a node, and I believe that I believe Eclair is being used. I believe they use Eclair, or at
Yeah,
least they have worked on it or helped it if they don't use it. And so I would recommend that as a talk to check out as soon as the TabConf talks you live, because he'll probably have a lot to say about that.
that's cool. Yeah, that was going to be my next question about TabConf because I know you helped. I know they're organizers, but then you were kind of on one of the teams there, helping make TabConf happen. Sounds like the LDK, Matt Crowell's talk was a big one. Was that? Did he also? Um, was that information on signaling support for Bolt 12, onion messaging?
Yeah, onion messaging. So that was actually Valentine Wallace who put
Okay,
out that post over at the on the LDK
gotcha.
team, and she was at TabConf though.
Cool.
So there may have been a talk that she covered that. I can imagine them not talking about that at some point throughout the weekend,
Yeah,
and I definitely didn't catch that talk, but I'd imagine they covered it at least in some capacity, given how recently it was announced.
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So Eclair, yeah, Async built Eclair, and it looks like there is support for onion messaging between Eclair nodes.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
yeah. So anyway, it could be exciting to have that in the network, for various reasons. I think some people are not so hot on Bolt 12, but I think it might be a lot of fun. So well, I guess we'll see.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know Nifty Nye is big on Bolt 12 over at Blind Spring. So
Yeah. But when your mentor was Rusty Russell, I'd imagine you're very bullish on Bolt 12.
yeah, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure.
But
That's cool.
yeah, I mean, other things that I think are cool in the Lightning and space, and specifically stuff that like came through TabConf as well, was I know that like Justifer and the Amboss team, they did a workshop on their Magma channel liquidity selling and buying marketplace, which was super cool. I didn't actually catch it, but I've used it, and they use HODL invoices.
Hmm.
And it's very interesting little setup. So that's always an exciting thing to see, is more liquidity provisioning marketplaces popping up. I saw, I think it was Buck Purley, I think is his last name. He
Yeah.
did a whole talk on LSATs, which was interesting. I don't know if anyone actually ever claimed his LSATs or his SATs. He put up a challenge, and then everybody had to basically like build an LSAT to like steal the SATs or like claim the SATs. And I don't know if anyone ever did, so that might be still up for grabs.
How many sats are up for grabs?
I don't know. Probably, I would imagine at least 100,000. That's what it seems
Oh,
like
really?
these days. Yeah, a couple bucks. Like, I think so. In Capture the Bitcoin over the weekend, I only really got to one key first. It was the first key. It was Jeremy Rubin's key. I got very far on my own, and then I begged him for some help, and nobody. This was like close to the end of the last day, and nobody had gotten it this far. So he was kind enough to sit down with me and help me through some Rust, because I'm rusty on Rust, if you will. And and so I ended up claiming those sats. So it was like, zero point zero 0.01 or 0.001, something like that, like $20 or whatever. So nothing wrong with that. I'll take free $20.
Yeah.
Of course, Taro is on chain on testnet, right? But they're working on the Lightning implementation of that. So the ability to create a stable token or some sort of token, and then putting it into a channel, and then you can traverse that value throughout the Lightning network. So I'm very bullish on that. Very excited for that. I think that could change the entirety of the industry in a very good way, because it will give people who are worried about or um, anxious about the liquidity, or rather the volatility problems of Bitcoin to fiat. When you live in a fiat world, but you spend in Bitcoin, obviously you're going to have to deal with the volatility there. But if there's a way to stabilize that against some sort of an asset that is built in Bitcoin, on Bitcoin, with Bitcoin, and backed by its hash rate, then you could potentially do lots of cool things with stabilizing that value. So very excited about that. So yeah, so I mean, just a handful of things that I guess there was a whole workshop on attacking lightning, which was interesting.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was called Ellen Sploit. Is they built a whole exploit package on different ways to exploit lightning, and as part of the whole theme of like attacking lightning to then build it back up for the weekend. And they actually also walked us through how to exploit the LND BTC debug that happened last week.
Oh,
So how
yeah.
you could have like stolen funds because of that bug.
Wow. Who gave that talk?
Let me see. I'd have to look at. It was Tony Giorgio, I think. I think he's over at in Austin with those guys.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. It was a cool talk for sure.
Yeah.
I don't. That one won't be broadcasted, unfortunately, but you can check his stuff, ellensploit.com or something like that. So you can probably find it on the Googles.
On the Googles. Nice. Two, then like TabConf. It sounds awesome. I haven't been able to come. I thought I was going to get to this year, but just didn't quite work out. Um, but it just sounds like such a cool conference. It sounds like there are kind of different uh, themes, maybe. And the first couple days seem to be more like, hey, here are all these open source projects. Maybe for people who haven't been to TabConf, want to go next year, what's it like?
Yeah, for sure. I can do a quick shill. So TabConf, the Atlanta Bitcoin Conference. This is, geez, maybe like the fourth, fifth year. I think the first one was 2017, 16. I'd have to look
Okay.
at the history page to be certain, but it's been going on for many years now, and it's grown. Right, at first it was like 200 people in the General Assembly at Ponce City Market, and it scaled to 500 at Georgia State, and then the next year was like, I think COVID, so
Ah,
nothing
yeah.
happened. The blank year, but
Hmm.
then 2021, 500 people in that range. So then this year, I don't know what the final number was, but there was a lot of people, and there's a lot of really smart people. So the big brains. Lalu was there from Lightning, Jeremy Rubin and he started his new company Judica.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and Merch over at Chain Code, and Ruben Somson. He just got a Spiral grant. Matt Corallo. I mean, it's like Peter Vola was there, Ben Carmen. The names go on. Evan Cloudis. I mean, it was a lot of really smart people teaching you the best of the, like, it's like learning from the source, right? It's like
Yep.
can't get better than that. And yeah,
Shout out
so
to Zeus there. I'm a
for
Zeus
sure.
user.
Right on. Me too. Yeah, Evan was cool, man. He was like he came to the Terminus party, and I forget who. Somebody walked over and was like, "Hey, Brian, I want to introduce you. This is Evan, or yeah, this is Brian, or whatever." And he reaches out, he shakes my hand, he's like, "What's up, man? I'm Evan." I was like, "I know." It's like, I know who you are. Like, bro, I've used your software for a year, for a couple of years. I know exactly who you are. It's nice.
That's
It's an
great.
honor to meet you.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. He's a cool guy, and shout out to Zeus for sure. They run a great wallet.
Isn't that crazy though? Like in the Bitcoin world, like in Lightning, you can know with a lot of the software, you can know exactly who's building it,
Oh
right? You
yeah,
don't necessarily know that really at all in the legacy system. So it's really interesting, the
no.
transparency.
Or if you do know, you don't get an opportunity to like chop it up with them and have a beer on a weekend and like talk about like their story and how they got there. Right? It's like Google or somebody at Google creating, Python. It's Guido Van Rossum over at Google invented Python back in the day. And it's like, well, the only way you'd be able to get in touch with him is like maybe on Twitter or something if you're lucky. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's like being at the early days of the internet where people are inventing cool stuff, and then you get to go like talk to them about like what they're doing and why, and you can even help them, right, and be a part of something bigger than yourself, which I think is, if I had to guess, about 99% of Bitcoiners in this space. That's really what drives us. So it is very cool to be able to do that at Tab, because that's what Tab is focused on, is the builders and focusing on the people that make the shit happen, and getting those people to bring that education to everybody, to the community. and making them available. And that's huge. It's a big deal because you don't, like we just said, you don't always get that. But Tab shifted its like format a couple years ago or a year ago, I think, into like there's like main stage talks and that track, but then there's like multiple villages. So there's like the pleb dev village, and there's the Socratic village. There's the gaming village and the next gen village, and each of them are kind of run by like separate groups of people who like for example, Jay over at Card Coins um, was one of many running the Big Dev Socratic Village, and he did it last year too. The guy is awesome, by the way. Jay, shout out to him. I got to watch him in action at BitDevs right before Tab, and that guy just has a way of talking. He's so smooth. It was fun to listen to. But yeah, so it's a cool format because it takes a lot of, because it's a community run organized festival, right? Volunteers mostly. Yeah, pretty much everybody's a volunteer in some capacity. And so, it makes it a little easier to be able to sort of outsource it to people who are smart and want to run their own village, and then, collaborate with the broader team like Tidwell and Brandon and Steven and Brianna. But they kind of like get like master of their domain, so to speak. So highly recommend to anybody who's looking at a good conference for next year and is a builder or interested in meeting some of the people who build the stuff that you use. 100% you should check out TabConf 2023. Don't know when tickets go on sale, because I think if I brought that up, Steven might kill me because it just ended. But I'm sure it'll be not in short order soon enough. They'll be available, so definitely keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, I was just going to have you tap on his shoulder and tell him John's asking when the tickets are on sale. So,
yeah, he might lose his mind.
I'll stay on his good side.
Yeah, smart.
That's awesome. Well, Bryan, I know our time needs to wrap up here, but yeah, how can people find you? Where can they go to kind of get an angle on you and your work?
Sure. Yeah. For me, I mean, I'm on Twitter at Nonni_IO. But really, go check out Terminus.money is our website. Our Twitter is at TerminusBTC. And yeah, go give us a check us out. Give us a look if you're in the Atlanta area and you're looking for a place to work. Like, please give us a call. We've got a phone number on there. It looks like a funky Montana number because it is, but I sort of got it. It's for us. And then, or fill out our form, or just stop by, right? Like there's an address, come stop by, come hang out, talk to us, whatever. And we'd love to hear from you.
I was going to ask about the 406. I'm like, that's the other corner of the country, man.
Yeah. Well, you got to do some OPSEC to distance
sure.
yourself a little bit. So anyway, I ended up grabbing us like a burner because I didn't want to put my cell phone on the website, and like I didn't want to make them. The only other options like Google Voice, and it's like we're Bitcoiners, like we figure out some like cool like anonymizing way to like have a phone number. So I ended up going through like the process of signing up a track phone and like buying minutes through like Bitrefill with Bitcoin and setting it up, like whatever, all that stuff. So it was a fun process, a learning process. So now we've got a Billings, Montana zip code.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, the cool thing is, I don't even know if I've told you this, but I'll be in Atlanta more for my own work. So I'm going to have to hit you guys up for one of the tiers for sure. So
Absolutely. Yeah. We do have like day pass stuff, but for anybody that's new, we're like, dude, just come hang out with us for a day or two. See if you like it. If you don't like it, all good. So we'd love to have you, John. That'd be great.
I'll let you know. It'll be sooner rather than later. So
sounds awesome.
Well, hey man, thanks for coming on. Awesome to hear more, and we'll have to have you on down the road and hear more about the growth of Terminus.
Sounds great, man. Thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. I could talk all day. Unfortunately, I talk way too much. So thanks for letting me yammer on your podcast for an hour.
That's awesome.
And we'll look forward to when Terminus we get our shit together, so to speak, and start having doing our own episodes of the podcast, we'll definitely have to get you on and chat about it. Chat about
great.
changing the tide. So
Let's go.
yeah, let's do it. Cool.
All right, man.
All right,
See
man.
ya.
Yep. See ya.
Wow, what a cool, wide-ranging episode from Bryan's pre-programming years in which he had no idea about Bitcoin to being a software engineer focused on Lightning. How cool is that? And not only being focused on Lightning, but also trying to proliferate adoption and understanding to these traditional companies that are located, legacy payment rail companies that are located in Transaction Alley there in the greater Atlanta area, and opening up Terminus in a space for people to work. And so to that end, Bryan's going to give me the node ID so that I can plug it into Fountain, and any sats that you stream to here are going to be split between me and then, of course, Fountain and Podcast Index. But then 50% are going to be going to Terminus as well. So trying to raise awareness of what they're doing. There is a whole lot of brain power in that Atlanta corridor that needs to go to Terminus and start working on Lightning. And just the brain power being shared like it is in Austin, like it is up in New York, and that sort of thing. And so it's very early days, but they have a strong team of people there at Terminus to start with. And so make sure if you got any value from Bryan on this, you learned about Terminus and you want to go work there or anything, please stream so that you can support Terminus, and those will go directly to Terminus's node. And then beyond that too, let me know what was interesting. If you had any questions for Bryan, I know he's open. If you send questions in a Boostergram, he'll be open to answering them. And if he doesn't know the answer, maybe Steven or Alex there at Terminus will know as well. But just if you're looking for any more information and want a direct response from him, we can make that happen as well. And overall, excited. Next year, I definitely want to be at TabConf. So I'm glad he talked about that. But this idea of Atlanta as a terminus on the railroads and now on the new payment rails is just really cool, and excited to see that proliferate. And yeah, just excited to continue with builders like Bryan in the Lightning Network space who are bringing a freedom and prosperity that just isn't possible on the legacy system. And so, yeah, like, subscribe, preferably on Podverse, Breeze, Fountain, or Castmatic as well. If you have to go legacy, Apple, Google, Spotify, I'm there as well. But I'm really trying to push people towards the new podcasting standards on Podcast Index as well. And then beyond that, make sure that you're stacking hard. We are in a space where there is some just major opportunity and to stack still before it really goes, I think, and not as this financial advice, but I'm just looking at the fundamentals here, and at some point something's got to give, and it might be around the next halving in 2024, when instead of I believe it is 6.25 every 10 minutes, that it is going to be 3.125. So that is something to keep in mind as that supply continues to dwindle. So yeah, it would be, let's see here, I'm looking for it and I can't find it. So, well, in any case, how do I not know this? Yeah, the block subsidy is 6.25. That's right. So I was right. And that will drop to 3 1/8 Bitcoin every 10 minutes in 2024. So it's just got to keep going as it goes down in the amount of new that's available is coming in, that inflation rate going down, especially with inflation being what it is at the moment in USD. And I know the reported amount is not even close to what it actually is. And then you can imagine that in other countries around the world as well. Turkey, Venezuela still, even EU countries. So the inflation rate everywhere is just ballooning, and there's never been more of a need for a disinflationary standard. Bitcoin provides that. No one else does, and that is why it is changing the tide. Until next time, keep stacking, stay safe, but make sure you're innovating, and we'll see you next time.